Hey, what's up, everybody? How's everyone doing? All right. Hey, so I'm David Hochschild, Chair of the California Energy Commission, and I want to share some of the really exciting stuff that's happening here in our state, in California. I think with all of the tumult going on now out of Washington, D.C., it's more important than ever that California be steady and be committed, and that is exactly what we're doing. We're now the fourth largest economy in the world, and we're all in on building this clean energy future. So I want to share with you a little bit about what's happening here in our state on this stuff, and then open it up for some questions. So the Chinese word for crisis is wei ji. It's just two other words put together, danger and opportunity. And I think it's really important for us all to remember that there's opportunity inside every crisis, including the climate crisis. And so I think we actually have the opportunity in this moment to build something beautiful and powerful and lasting, okay? And I got into the energy arena in the middle of a crisis. I worked for then Mayor Willie Brown in 2001 here in San Francisco. And I'll just share a funny story. But Willie Brown's the only mayor that I know of a major American city who left his phone number listed in the white pages. So this woman calls him one night at 3 in the morning to say that her street light is out, and he gets it fixed. The next morning, he sets his alarm for 3 in the morning, calls her back and says it's fixed. So he had a great sense of humor. In 2001, we had blackouts. We didn't know what was causing them. We now know it was from market manipulation from actors like Enron. But inside that moment, we were able to put together a $100 million bond initiative to put solar panels on public buildings, on port buildings and reservoirs and city hall and schools. And that's actually how I got into the energy field 25 years ago. So the core of our work is around the grid. Really, the future of energy is going to flow through wires and not pipes. Where nearly 2/3 of our electricity today in California is coming from clean sources of energy. Alternative energy is the wrong word to use to describe renewables. Fossil is alternative on the grid today. And by 2035, the law requires, and we will get to 90% clean energy, and 2045, 100%. Meanwhile, because of the market transformation that's happened here, and California has played this huge role as an incubator of these technologies, we're winning on price across the country and across the world. And this stat here, 96% of new capacity additions in the US last year were clean energy, is one of those really critical pieces of information that gets no attention. But this is huge, and this is cause for hope because this same model, solar, and it's happening also with wind and batteries. Clean technologies are winning because we're driving the cost down. And it's not complicated. It's 3 things. It's innovation and automation and scale. It's mostly scale that's making this possible. Meanwhile, also 96% of the retirements on the grid are fossil, mostly coal coming offline. So the grid is getting cleaner in every state, including red states. And coal is a really important story to remember because not so long ago, in 2011, 52% of America's energy portfolio was coal, and people talked about it as a 1,000-year resource. It's now 16% and falling, and it's just being displaced really on economics. So one of my favorite proverbs, the people say it can't be done should get out of the way of the people who are doing it. So let's do a little tour of where this clean energy is coming from. This is the world's largest thin film solar PV project called Desert Sunlight. This was installed, maybe a decade ago or so in Riverside County. And, this is just an interesting story of innovation just over the construction of this one project. So it's about 0.5 gigawatt, so roughly half of the peak demand of a city like San Francisco. All this innovation happened. So these modules were put in fixed tilt situation because the efficiency of the solar panel wasn't high enough to justify being on a single axis tracker. When you're on a tracker, you generate about 25% more power. By the end of the project cycle, all the solar panels that were coming out were on a high enough efficiency that were justified to have that extra cost. So everything pretty much since then became tracking. This site was graded, which takes a lot of energy and disturbs the land. They've now figured out how to just vibrate the posts in without having to grade. These are thin film modules, and they all had an aluminum frame. Halfway through the project, they figured out they could get rid of the aluminum frame. So all this innovation driving costs down. It's part of the reason why today the single cheapest resource on the electricity market is utility scale solar. We're also home in California to the world's largest geothermal power plant. So this is the geysers, about 2 hours north. This is about a gigawatt in size, and very important resource because it's 24/7. And so we do want diversity in the electric portfolio. And we're home as well to what used to be the world's largest wind project, is now the world's third largest wind project. And these are races I love to lose because it means someone else is stepping up. This is the Alta Wind Energy Center in Kern County. For those of you who know California, you think Kern County, you think oil. The second biggest taxpayer in Kern County is wind. Is this? Okay. We're also home to the world's largest solar roof. This is the Apple headquarters in Cupertino, 17 megawatt solar roof. That sort of donut hole in there is actually so big you could take the entire 49ers football stadium and fit it inside, but it's filled with fruit trees. So I had like major building envy when I was going there. And the world's largest battery project. This is the Edwards and Sanborn battery project, also in Kern County. That is going to be replaced by an even larger one, which we're going to be voting on permitting in June. So energy storage has taken huge strides forward. And all of this is happening because we're driving, the deployment of solar and wind and batteries so much faster than other industries if you compare to how fossil grew and so on. And that's a function of the cost coming down very steeply. Solar being one of the best examples. So in 2004, it took a year to construct a gigawatt of solar. 2010, it took a month. 2016, it took a week. 2023, it took a day to build a gigawatt of solar. And last year, 2024, half a day. It today is the single biggest investment on the world's electric grid, in excess of $500 billion a year, and a good example of the kind of market transformation that's possible. We're also deploying a record amount of batteries. This has been the hottest battery market in the world. Just the last 5 years, almost 14 gigawatts of energy storage, and it's working, okay? So last summer, because of climate change, we had the hottest summer in the history of the state of California. And because we're electrifying almost everything, and there's all these communities that previously didn't need air conditioning that now need it, our load has been going up. Load's been very flat for a long time because we're so efficient. We got through the highest temperature and the highest electric load in the history of the state, not only with no outages, we didn't even have a flex alert, which is the signal you send if we get close, and storage is the reason why. It's really providing a lot of insulation. And you can see what it does on that shoulder peak, coming in after solar. We've deployed over 27 gigawatts of new capacity just since Gavin Newsom became governor of California. That was in 2019. So that's about $80 billion. I think there is a very fair critique to be made of the state on, we've not been building, affordable housing fast enough. High-speed rail has taken a long time. I've just finished reading this book, Abundance, Ezra Klein's new book, which is actually has a very welcome critiques. But on power, there is a big success story. We're getting this stuff built faster than ever. So we built 7 gigs in 2023. The rest of the West combined, the other 11 states, only 300 megawatts. So California just leading the way on the deployment of these technologies. And we hit another amazing milestone last year. For the first time ever, we hit 100% clean energy for some portion of the day on 219 days last year. It's never happened before. And we're not going to stop until we get to 100% clean energy 100% of the time for 100% of the people. And that is a vision and a reality that we're going to make happen in our lifetime. And I'm really excited about that. Another big milestone that relates really well to this and kind of goes back to the opening point about opportunity inside a crisis is what happened in 2020 in the midst of the worst wildfire season our state has ever seen. In the middle of COVID, Governor Newsom did something incredible. He did this executive order setting the rule that we have to get to 100% zero-emission vehicles for new vehicle sales by 2035. And that was laughed at and scoffed, but they're not laughing now. We're adding 1,300 electric vehicles a day, and we're at over 25% of vehicle sales being electric today. So we just hit 2 million electric vehicles, and by 2028, we project electric vehicle sales will surpass internal combustion engine vehicle sales. And we have more electric vehicle charge plugs than we have gasoline nozzles in California. We're putting in a huge amount. And so you're seeing this is a Tesla supercharger network, which has now been opened up to all non-Tesla EVs. And 98 stalls there. This site on the right is in San Francisco. It's an indoor charging depot from Electrify America, formerly an oil change spot. So now you just peel off the freeway and go in and go hit the fast charger. And then we just dedicated this about 2 months ago. This is the largest port-based heavy-duty truck charging depot in the world down in Long Beach. And we're also home to the first all-electric school bus fleet, which is in Oakland. So 74 buses, 74 chargers, 100% of the students at Oakland Unified School District who are going to school on a school bus are going electric. And it has a really nice feature to it, which is that these are vehicle-to-grid capable chargers. So the bus has, I think, like 150 kilowatt hour battery. It goes and does the route, drops the kids off, and then comes back and maybe has used 50 of that, and they can then feed surplus power back into the grid right around 4 o'clock, which is when the grid needs it, and it can be a battery for the grid, and they get compensated for that. So that's kind of a glimpse of the future. And as I mentioned, we have 178,000 chargers, 120,000 gasoline nozzles, and about 700,000 home EV chargers. But there also is a bunch of other really compelling electrification. We're right here on the San Francisco Bay. We're doing the first electric ferries in North America. We're going to do 5 of those. We were doing the charging infrastructure for that. We took delivery in San Diego of the first electric tugboat in the world. South Pasadena is the first all-electric police fleet. And so a lot of these milestones are being broken. And of course, we want everything that connects to the grid to be a good citizen of the grid as well to support reliability. We're also going further upstream. So this is a vision called Lithium Valley. We have in the southern end of the state a massive lithium reserve, enough to supply the batteries for 375 million electric vehicles. So more electric vehicle battery capability there than for every person in the country. And it's by far the greenest way to produce lithium. So if you think about lithium as sort of the oil of the clean energy future, most of that lithium, well over 90% comes from just 4 countries. So it's Chile and Argentina, where it's these massive evaporation ponds, and it's Australia and China, where it's hard rock mining. This is in a superheated geothermal brine that's about 1.5 miles down. We currently have about a dozen geothermal power plants generating clean electricity that cycle that brine. So they just attach a process to that, extract the lithium, and then the brine gets re-injected down back to the reservoir. The greenest way to produce lithium, because if you get 20,000 tons of lithium and you do that from South America evaporation ponds, you impact 30,000 acres. If you do it from hard rock mining, you impact 3,000 acres. From Salton Sea, Southern California, 30 acres. Very, very small footprint. And of course, it's all powered by clean geothermal energy. Over the course of the last 15 years or so, one of the main critiques of California when we launched on this bold pathway to lead on climate solutions and clean energy was, well, this is going to crash your economy. We heard that again and again and again and again. We remain in the state the largest economy by far in the country, but also we have surpassed, we were the 10th biggest economy in 2012, and then we passed Russia and Italy and Brazil and France and the UK, and then even this chart is outdated because we've now passed Germany. So I think it's a really important narrative to remember that it's possible to aggressively decarbonize and electrify and have a healthy economy. And part of what we got to do collectively is tell that story better. I'll just wrap with this. This is Fifth Avenue Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City in 1900. It's all horses and buggies. And 13 years later, same street, um, all cars, right? So there is, and one horse and buggy. So I think we have to kind of remind ourselves of how quickly transitions can occur, and that's the opportunity ahead of us. The technologies that we need are actually all ripe. It's really about deployment. So a lot of what we're trying to do, I would call the great implementation. We actually have these landmark goals: 100% clean energy, 100% zero emission vehicles, 25 gigawatts of offshore wind, 6 million electric heat pumps, and on and on. And right now we're just in the period of getting the money out there, setting up the regs, and making it happen. And we're also doing a lot with new construction. So we build over 100,000 new homes a year in California. We're the #1 state in the country for efficiency. We're requiring solar on every single new building. We're adding a gigawatt of solar a year just through our new construction code, and continuing to lead best practice with new construction. So let me close with one last story, which is both my grandfathers were in World War II. Okay, and every American soldier, as part of their daily rations, got three things. You got food, you got chocolate, and you got a pack of cigarettes. Okay. So, end of World War II, you had a generation of American men come back as smokers, and smoking was, um, completely widespread. President Kennedy smoked. Johnny Carson smoked on the Tonight Show. Doctors did ads for cigarettes, and then the science came out that, hey, smoking causes cancer. Secondhand smoke causes cancer. Um, and what happened there, it really does mirror what we've seen with the story with climate science, right? Because the tobacco industry went from making one product, cigarettes, to making two products. They manufactured cigarettes and they manufactured doubt. Okay, they spent $100 million on junk science to distort this very basic truth that smoking causes cancer. But what happened next, I think, is um, very inspirational and very, very relevant to our collective climate story, because eventually the truth got out. It was accepted by the public and by policymakers, and it led to this cascade of policies to drive smoking levels down. So banning smoking on bars and airplanes, and sales to minors, the warning label, one thing after another, and we went from half the country smoking to today 9%. And I think the world has a smoking problem, and I am very hopeful that we're going to follow that same trajectory. But it will happen because, particularly leadership at the state level, that is fundamental to our success. And so California is going to play a huge role in that. So thank you all for being here and being a part of that. And I'll stop and take some questions. Thank you, guys. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so great questions. The question is about permitting. What can we do to accelerate? So there's two really exciting developments there. One is for large scale renewable energy projects. We have just implemented what's called fast track permitting, which is a 270-day permit process. And we're actually permitting our first project for that, which is the largest battery project in the world. On June 11th, we're set to vote on that. It's a half solar, half storage. And that'll be in Fresno County. And then there's another 20 gigawatts of projects to follow. And then on the customer side of the meter, we've also pushed out about $20 million of grants to roughly 200 jurisdictions to implement a one-day over-the-internet permit process for a process to get solar or behind-the-meter storage that used to take as long as 60 days. So now that can be done over the internet. And where is our guy from Solar App? Right here, yes, who's leading that effort. So some good progress there, but more to come. Yeah, other questions? Yeah, sure, have at it.
I figured this could be great, but what's one of the biggest roadblocks in the permitting process? And maybe another way of thinking about the question is like, what allowed you to actually bring this permitting process down to 270 days? If you kind of like, yeah, what were you able to shorten? What were you able to cut out?
Yeah, so there's definitely, I mean, so it's a balance because we have to. There's things we really do have to look at for CEQA, and we want to make sure what we're putting is safe, and you have to consider all the rest of the elements, visual impacts, and if there's any tribal sites that are disturbed and so on. But because we need to deploy so much clean energy, the legislature was willing to tighten up some of those processes, and was also willing to fully resource. It actually takes more staff if you want to do it faster. So we got additional resources, and we got a somewhat more constrained set of obligations, and that's what's allowing this to work. And so we can, as an agency, we can only implement programs that we have legislative direction to do. So that was a bill, AB 205, that the governor signed, not so long ago, that made that possible. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Dan Lockheed Martin. Just a quick question. Well, first of all, I applaud what you guys did with the setting the targets for long duration energy storage to look past, being entirely reliant on lithium ion. And I was curious if there's still the anticipation of having additional funding for pilots starting in 2026. I know that that expired.
Yeah, so we are doing about $300 million of grant funding for long duration storage, which we define as non-lithium chemistry. Typically your lithium batteries, which are almost all of what I showed you there, are 4-hour dispatch. So we're defining long duration as between 8 hours and 100 hours. There are some phenomenal chemistries out there, flow batteries, iron air and zinc air chemistries. We're actually doing a lot of these projects on tribal sites. We have 109 federally recognized tribes in California, and one of our commitments is to create opportunities and benefits for the tribes. So we're doing a number of these chemistries at tribes, Viejas and Pesquenta and some others. I am personally a big believer in long duration storage. I think it's a great technology category. There are hurdles for any new storage industry. It really is a high bar. And part of the challenge, I think, is that lithium ion has come down so much in cost. We were at $1,000 a kilowatt hour probably 12 years ago, and now maybe $70. So it's definitely winning on price and scale. But we're committed to keep investing in that industry, and proof of concept really matters. You get a project up and running, show it can work, and then that creates the conditions for more investment to flow. So thank you for that question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Casper Donason and Lawrence Livermore. On the topic of public acceptance of these technologies, I was quite astonished to see that about a third of utility scale wind and solar has been cancelled in the last 5 years. Half the projects have been delayed by over 6 months. The leading reason is people not wanting these technologies in their communities. On your list of concerns, how high is that, and what is your strategy for addressing it?
Great question. So building anything in California, even like a playground, it gets controversial. So there's no such thing as 100% consensus on any of these projects. Our commitment is to have a fully robust process where everybody gets their voice heard, and we really care about this. So every single project that we do, we go to the community. The commissioners go to the community. We hold hearings and workshops, and we take public comment. We try to respond to the feedback that we get. One thing that I think has hurt public adoption in the areas where it's been sticky is that we've had a solar property tax exemption for a long time, okay? And I think that was indicated at the time that it was created because solar was higher cost. Now solar is very low cost. That is sunsetting next year, okay? And so communities can point to, like this Darden project I mentioned, it's going to be paying $20 million a year in property taxes, which is going to go to improvements in schools and fire departments and all the rest. I think that helps a lot. I think labor, also people wanting these jobs. And I will say, young people are excited about these jobs. This is not, if you look at what the jobs are like in the coal industry and going underground and how dangerous that is, like versus getting involved in clean energy, these are jobs I think people are excited to have. And we just hosted a big symposium organized by my terrific chief of staff, Robert Chun, down in Long Beach around offshore wind. Okay, and we have a 25 gigawatt plan to do floating offshore wind off the coast of California. It's 20 miles offshore, and the interest and the passion from all of the trades and labor unions was amazing, and from environmental justice groups. So there's opposition, but there's also support. And not every project is going to get approved, even by us. Okay, so we look at everything, but there are some conditions in some communities where it's not going to make sense. So not everything's going to get over the finish line, but a lot will. And it depends. I think our real commitment is on doing the process right. I think when people feel heard and you have a chance to hear the other side of the story, you can get critical mass to get them done. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thinking about existing buildings and especially residential buildings, where would you say we are in the adoption curve of shifting from fossil fuels to all electric? And what do you feel is needed to really accelerate that process?
Yeah, so 5 years ago, this is another great part of the transition story. I would estimate only 1% of new construction in California. It's about 110,000 buildings a year we're building. Only 1% were all electric. This year, 82%. Huge transition, and basically heat pump adoption is the key thing. So we're now requiring that in code, that both space heating and water heating have to be done, high efficiency heat pumps. And that makes a huge difference. In addition, there was a policy made by the Public Utilities Commission which subsidized the natural gas distribution line. Okay, so you build out a new community, and that cost to get the gas line out was actually socialized and paid for by all ratepayers. That has been ended, okay, which is hugely consequential. It actually puts the cost, if you want gas, it actually makes the home more expensive. So then the home builders don't want to do it. So those little things tilting the playing field. And then the technology is better. I mean, heat pump technology has improved a lot. We've also just launched a big new campaign called the Heat Pump Partnership. We put in $9 million. We've raised another $3 million to do public outreach and awareness about heat pump technology. And there's a big outreach campaign launching this summer. We have set a goal for the state to get to 6 million electric heat pumps by 2030. We have about 2 million right now. And we want to make that mainstream. So a big sort of public-private partnership there. Thank you for the question. Yeah, go ahead. Here, take this.
California is known as very, presumably the most difficult, state in order to get all these permits. I'm again coming back to the permit stuff. How likely it will be to deploy the entirely new emerging technologies in California? I'm talking about the new systems of wildfire fighting, which definitely it's a change of paradigm how to do how to cope with this problem. It's also concerned the more efficient geothermal power plants, whatever is geysers you just mentioned. These technologies really outdated, and there are a lot of more efficient technologies that has to be implemented. By the permitting wise, it's sometimes impossible. I even remember some quote, I don't know from whom, that is probably from Elon Musk, that it's better, it's much more shorter to build the space rocket than collect all the paperwork to launch it. So how likely the state government will support promotion of such technologies? I'm not talking about like hyperloops, right, which was a kind of a very good project, but it was not implemented yet. And I'm talking about the modern aero taxis, that also need to have some permits for the to make the flights within the state.
Yeah, so I think both things are true. There still are permit challenges, but also we are the cradle of innovation. I mean, the stuff that is happening here, I'm on the road all the time. We were down visiting Joby not too long ago. They've just an hour south of here. They've raised $2 billion. They've have a vertical takeoff and landing electric, airplane, air taxi, and there's another 4 or 5 companies doing that kind of stuff. It's not happening in other places. And a lot of what makes that possible is we have this incredible innovation ecosystem. We are funding at the Energy Commission every year $150 million a year just for clean tech research and development. That has seeded a lot, and then you get a lot of follow-on funding. And then there is a migration from high tech to clean tech that happens here. But there's processes and permitting processes here that feel somewhat medieval to me sometimes. So it's both inspiring and maddening. I am very excited about what I'd call process innovation. And I mentioned these 2 examples of behind the meter and utility scale permitting where we're taking legitimately big new steps forward. And we got to do that much more. I mean, I would say permitting of electric vehicle charging infrastructure, I think, is one area I find still really frustrating. It can take 30 to 60 days in some cases, and that too should be much, much faster. So a lot more work to do. And sometimes I feel, honestly, we do the actual technology innovations better than the permit process on some of these things. But just as one example, all right, so we just had the fires in Southern California. I went down to visit Altadena, 6,500 homes had burned. The next month, all right, they had gotten permits and done undergrounding. They'd undergrounded all of those utility lines, which never happens. That just in a few weeks they were done with that. And so that was because they got waivers. So I mean, it was kind of inspiring. Like it's possible when we really focus. But you're right to raise that, and we got a lot of work to do there. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I live in Cupertino, and I see Cupertino and the state of California doing a lot of marketing about ways to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and migrate to clean energy. But we just had a panel up here before where they were saying that what people want is they want clean and they want invisible. Sending me a pamphlet saying I should put solar panels on my roof when I rent in an apartment building is kind of a waste of money. So what is California doing about all of these multi-tenant rental properties to get the landlords to migrate to clean energy?
So one thing to keep in mind, the environmental benefit of rooftop solar was a lot greater 15 years ago. I come out of the solar industry. Today, the vast majority of our electricity is clean and is getting cleaner. So you're not necessarily displacing gas with rooftop solar, whereas it used to be that's exactly what you were doing. In fact, we have shifted peak. It used to be the peak was in the middle of the day. Because we have so much solar, now the peak is much later in the afternoon, 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, because we've deployed so much solar. So it doesn't make sense for every single building to have that. And the landlord-tenant situation is a great example of a sort of unsolved problem because the cost goes on the landlord. But there are other solutions, community solar that you can buy into. But for the most part, what's happening and the big focus for us is just greening the trunk electric grid. And I think, having spent a huge chunk of my life on solar and working on rooftop solar policy, I actually think the most important, feature right now to focus on is actually electrification. That's where you get the biggest. So you will do much more to reduce emissions if you convert your water heater and your space heater, to electric heat pump than add, another bit of solar on the roof. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi there, Kate Ringnes, soon to be former DOE employee, but definitely former senior advisor to the secretary, best secretary ever, Jennifer Granholm, Bay Area native. So you mentioned innovation ecosystems, and I've noticed that there's some clusters of nuclear fusion companies here in the Bay Area, as well as in San Diego. And there's interest from one company in particular about doing a pilot project here in California, and they're not getting any traction anywhere. So I'm just curious, what's the CEC view on nuclear fusion, and how can we support all these companies that are starting to grow here?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for your service at Department. Let's give her a round of applause to so many good people at the Department of Energy. I just was with Secretary Granholm in her last week in January and did a little town hall with her team there. And I will just say on that topic, I mean, it's really disheartening to see people who are performing really well get promoted and then they're in a probationary role in their new higher role and getting fired then because they're probationary. So we're like firing people for excellence right now. And it's shameful. And so I hope that turns around. Look, with respect to nuclear, we built 5 nuclear facilities in California. 4 have been decommissioned. Diablo is the last one remaining. That did just get an extension. We're prohibited by statute from building any new nuclear until there's a long-term solution for the waste. So it's not for us at the Energy Commission. Oh, sorry. So you're asking about fusion rather than nuclear. Sorry. So different. Sorry. Okay, I was saying fission. So, but just to finish on that, because we get asked a lot about nuclear, that is up to the legislature in terms of new nuclear. They have to change the law. With fission. With fusion, rather, you're right. There is a lot of activity there. I think, we're probably leading the country in terms of the technology startups here. I think the constraint right now on our budget is so great that the focus is on stuff that's much nearer term and ready to deploy now. And the reality is, like in the electricity market, for meeting our needs, what is happening is solar and storage are dominating and they're working and they're very cost effective. And so with the limited dollars, like that is where the vast majority of focus is going to support that. But it's a totally fair question. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Hi, Julio Friedman, Carbon Direct. Thank you for everything you've done. You've been terrific on the commission. The whole commission's been great. One of the big challenges, as you know, is energy infrastructure. And for me, critical energy infrastructure are the ports. You talked about the Port of Long Beach. They've been leaders for a long time. Oakland has electrified. What more can be done to actually build out clean energy infrastructure in the ports of California, which are trade hubs and face the world?
I had high hopes that this would be one of the few issues we might find common cause with the Trump administration on ports modernization and rare earths, minerals, and lithium. We'll see how that shakes out, but I do have some good news, which is that we have about $500 million that the Energy Commission is going to be pushing out for port upgrades connected to the offshore wind work. That was because California adopted in November, one good thing did happen, a big climate bond. So there's a $10 billion bond and almost $500 million of that was set aside for ports. And there's another chunk of state money we have, which is we're pushing out in next month in May, about $43 million for a number of ports. So we have some state money coming in that arena. I think the electrification of ports checks a lot of boxes. It's a big priority for environmental justice communities that live adjacent to all that drayage truck traffic. There is some great stuff happening. Companies like Forum Mobility that are doing electric trucking and fast charging infrastructure. That picture I showed you from Long Beach is a great example. And then, go to Long Beach. The port there is amazing. I think, the most electrified port in North America. Their key cranes and their gantry cranes are electric. San Diego as well. And so a lot of what needs to happen is just electrifying. And again, I think we're at the point, like, the technology is ripe, and it's so powerful when you have examples. The best way to persuade a port to do it is show how another port has already done it. And so we're at that point now. So we really do need more grant money. And I will say, like, this climate bond that just passed, I am not going to be surprised at all if there's another one, kind of rinse and repeat. And that's how we help fund that stuff. So, any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, thank you for being here. It's great to hear you. Couple of questions, if I might. The first one is there any thought process on changing the incentive structure for utilities, changing it from a cost plus to more of a, keeping the mind the rates for taxpayers impact from that standpoint? So right now, I think from what my understanding is, like, PG&E gets paid, the investment, for instance, for undergrounding plus 10% added as their profit. But is there Is there an incentive to change that? To
Performance-based, yeah, compensation. Yeah, I know that's been talked about. That is a Public Utilities Commission decision, not an Energy Commission decision. And they do get, about 10% rate of return. And, the utilities are profitable not just every year, but every quarter because of that. And they have a monopoly. So in many ways, it is a great business model for them. But I think clearly there have been shortfalls in performance, and particularly around fire safety. I know that's been an active conversation. I don't know of a sort of immediate plan to switch to that model at the PUC though.
Second question, if I might. Any learnings from the California high-speed rail project, and any updates on that?
Well, look, let me start with another sort of related success story in this space, which is I think it's called the Bright Line line, which connects Las Vegas to Los Angeles. And that's a high-speed, all-electric rail, and that will be done by the time of the Olympics. And it's a 4-year build-out. I think there's 1,000 people working on that, and it's a shorter line. I'm not deep enough on the machinations of the whole high-speed rail program. It was a route that was, maybe a little more complex and political and meandering than one might have liked. I think it's been a black eye, honestly, on the whole clean energy bill, just how long it has taken and the mismatch in expectations. And I think one thing going forward with these projects, I think you have to have very clear expectations set, and the trajectory and all the problems, laid out, and then keep to those. I think it really does. It does create a lot of issues when you're setting expectations and missing all the time. So I think it's unfortunately become the poster child, of some of what's not right in our state. But having ridden high-speed rail, I was in China last year. I mean, it's amazing. You get on these trains, and they're so fast and clean, and they're building them so quickly. And once you have the system, you never go back. So very eager for that to be done, but that's definitely not one of our prouder moments, unfortunately. All right, I think I've bored everybody to tears. Hey, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.